WP, you, a mere human, find yourself inside an arena and pitted against all sorts of supernatural beings in combat. Being a die-hard fantasy fan, however, you know their weaknesses. All of them. A flash. A bang. Whisked away through time and space. Beyond the veil and past the universe. Into the void and yonder. The mind burns. The body grasps for a hold but finds none. You travel in an ethereal cloud. Watched and gazed by a horde of distorted faces in a tunnel of voices. A decision. A sentence. Suddenly, your feet find a solid hold and you fall to your knees. There will be a fight. You have been chosen to entertain the crowd. To suffer and die for the twisted amusement of a fantastic crowd. A puny human versus legendary creatures. You get a good look at them. Somehow. You expected monsters. Well, these are monsters alright. But not in the incomprehensible creatures from beyond sense. These are more in a not very original sense. Not a single being that you haven't heard of. In stories. In books. In movies. In tales. The Sphinx wears a crown and commands authority. It is king. As it speaks, all fall silent. You are allowed one wish before heading to the arena. The entire room falls silent when you ask for a fully equipped kitchen. They did not expect that. Fail to understand. A promise is a promise. The yellow field that will soon run red is surrounded by grey walls adorned with spikes. On them, rows of seats for the eager spectators. And in the middle of the sand, your dream come true, the most equipped kitchen you ever had. The gates open. Enter the slaughterers. Hostile. Violent. Used to kill and maim. The crowd is audibly disturbed when the Medusa is stabbed through the throat as you walk backwards. Holding a pristine knife as mirror. The bloodsucker is drenched in salt and battered to death with a sack of flour. The centaur is lured by the scent of wine and bludgeoned as he enjoys the fine drink. The gruesome spectacle does not end here. Though. There is snake and horse meat to cook now. More than you could have afforded in the other world. And dear lords above. You loved cooking. The crowd leaves. Horrified. There is no rule stipulating how the defeated are to be handled. No law is broken as the anti-catchers are grilled. Tonight, a new monster has been born. You fall asleep under a purple sky. Belly full with the delicious dish you just sampled. Bigger foes are brought in the next day. These are not here to amuse, but to kill the abomination that has made its home in the arena. Sadly for the chimera, the meat you have cooked is too delicious to ignore. And it's sticking from a spike above the creature's reach. It spits fire in anger. The sharp metal you had planted inside starts to melt and dips down the lion's mouth. And the chimera is dead from clogged windpipes before it understands what happened. A crowd is a fickle thing. It can hate one day and love another. And after the first shock, there's an undeniable artistic streak in the way you dispatch your enemies. A twisted sense of aesthetic the people come to enjoy. The king cannot bear it. It is to be loved above all else. And the champion is stealing love away. The slave has become the public's idol. The sky turns green. Dust shimmers on the red field in this time. No one cheers when the gates open. The king enters the arena. Kings do not get interrupted. Kings command quietness by their presence. Force of habit. A habit you ignore by asking a riddle first. The Sphinx finds your lack of respect despicable, but will solve your riddle before asking one back. And then, it will devour you. So enjoy the seconds you bought yourself. Puny mortal. After all, the Sphinx knows every answer. Every answer from this world. He sure as fuck doesn't know about the 5th generation of Pokemons. Sweat pearls down the mighty beast's forehead. It stumbles upon its words. Tries to buy itself some time to think. It knows the answer. Has to. But when the crowd screams for death, it knows it has lost. The answer was Pignite. By the way, you never played Pokemon, but had seen the little creature's design and found it amusing. Thus remembered it. Funny how it goes. Out of alternatives, the king drops its crown and slams himself against the spikes, ending its reign forever. You could go back. But for what? You have plenty of things to cook here. And where on earth would you get sphinx meat? Wine made of bloodsucker's blood? A manticore jaw kept open to act as an oven? A wild crowd that adores you and gives you offerings daily? It is strange, but fitting, that in a world of fantastic beasts, you have become their new legend. Their mythical creature. Lord of the Arena. The new big bad wolf for beings who do not behave well. The gates open. A cyclops steps on the crimson sand. Twice your height. Armed with a gigantic club. Shaking to the bones. You turn towards it with a smile. Sharpening a knife. Ah. Fresh meat. Deep in the pit where reality twists. In the lower planes where myth and mortal blend. Stood a lone figure in the center of the gulch. It was here where the dirt was slick with blood and sinew. Here where many before him had fallen to the horrors that lurked just outside the mortal veil. The clouds had worn their funeral suits. The crowd had donned their masks. And the primeval monster moved around restlessly in its box as the handlers appeared. Humanoid atrophied beings adorned in melted candles. They carried with them the iron rods that were used to open the sliding door of the box safely. On both sides. They lifted the hooks under the iron rings and revealed the monster. The handlers quickly shambled away toward the safety of the wall as the creature emerged. A skinless monstrosity of muscle and tendons awkwardly scrambled out of the box and stomped around a moment as an abhorrent scream escaped its lips, which said, he couldn't tell. For the creature had two mouths. It appeared to be two bodies, a man atop a horse. But he knew better. It was one being horrifically merged together in whatever instant God had blinked. It held a spear in its hands that looked as though it had just been pulled from the guts of a bigger creature. A Nukulovi. The man spoke with an eager grin. I've never actually wrestled with one of your kind. He brushed his blonde hair out of his eyes and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The monster didn't waste words after it spotted him. A gruesome red eye opened on the center of what would be the horse's forehead and it screamed yet again before charging toward him. Spear at the ready. He knew his shield wouldn't be enough. The Nukulovi had a secret weapon that would catch a less informed opponent off guard. He deftly dodged the attack and held his breath as the mouth of the horse head parted and blew a green smog across him. Both attacks failed as he retreated out of the smog and watched the monster carefully as it began to turn around at a full gallop. TCH. And I wanted to drink this. He muttered as he reached for the gourd on his belt. He unscrewed the cap and watched as the monster started toward him yet again. Its hoofs beat the ground like thunder and shook the ground as it approached. He waited carefully for his moment as it drew nearer and nearer. Almost. A little more. He didn't miss his moment. He swung the gourd like a sword, unleashing an arc of fresh water high into the air before lifting his shield and bracing for impact. He knew he wouldn't have time to dodge if he wanted to catch it by surprise. The monster ran through the water and slammed into him at the same time. His shield held strong, but his body was flung several feet as the creature writhed in agony. He tumbled to the ground and rolled a few times before scampering back to his feet. He took a deep breath and observed the water's effects. Thought you might be thirsty, he commented as he strode toward the creature. It began to wither and corrode as it dropped to the dirt and thrashed around. He hadn't counted on facing a Nukulovi, but it mattered little. He always kept water on hand. He produced his sword for the first time, pulling it from the scabbard on his hip as he positioned himself over the dying creature. The crowd went wild as he plunged his blade into the monster's first head, then the other to be sure. Too bad I was your opponent today, he growled before turning to face the handlers, who sat in their chairs with frustrated expressions. What's next? He screamed. Bring them. No. Seriously. What's next? I'm up for suggestions. Are a 15-minute mythos.